in Texas, because the Texas House yesterday passed a new congressional map that could give Republicans 5 more seats after next year's midterm elections. The vote passed, of course, along party lines after more than 8 hours of debate. It ends a bitter redistricting fight in the House that included Democrats leaving Texas for 2 weeks. Republicans currently control now 25 of the 38 congressional districts there. Under the new map, President Trump would have carried 30 of 38 seats, all by more than 10 points. The Texas State Senate will likely pass the map this evening, and Governor Greg Abbott is expected to sign it into law by tomorrow. Meanwhile, former President Barack Obama shared his support for California's attempt to counter those mid-decade redistricting efforts by Republicans in the Lone Star State. At a fundraising event earlier this week, Obama said he had, quote, tremendous respect for Governor Newsom's proposal to redraw his state's congressional maps in response to the Texas effort. Obama went on to say that Democrats must respond effectively to Republican gerrymandering, even if it means breaking with traditional norms, and that Newsom's plan is a, quote, responsible approach. Yesterday, the California Supreme Court said it wouldn't prevent Democrats from moving forward with a plan to redraw their congressional districts. After last night's vote in Austin, Newsom posted on social media, quote, it's on, Texas. Joining us now, Washington correspondent for Spectrum News, Kevin Fry. Kevin, the margins are so incredibly tight in the House. That's why these stories matter so much. That plus the fact that the Texas redistricting effort is really only happening because the folks at the White House and in Washington said this would really be good for you to do. So what's the response then from lawmakers, including in the Texas delegation, who were not too fond of this effort either?
Right. I mean, and look, if you consider the fact that the margins in the House are essentially down to if you have like 4 or 5 votes, depending on who is absent and how many slots are empty. And so at the end of the day, this could be the whole ball game, is just this redistricting back and forth. And we seem to be entering and setting up this scenario where we could have really a spiral where various states are now going to basically take and jump at this opportunity, because Republicans are also being leaned on in places like Indiana and Missouri to also take advantage of this opportunity to try to redistrict. And quite frankly, we're seeing this potential of turning into a once in a decade, into every single cycle to try to squeeze out the latest advantage. And so you have seen when it comes to, for example, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries leaning in, saying, please, California, I respect this as an enlightened and forceful effort that they're considering out there, which could, if they go forward with this, and it seems like guns are blazing to try to do this in California as well, that would basically balance out things. But if you look at the grand map, it seems the GOP has more opportunities to try to move things in their direction in the grand scheme of things, and that could help them in what's expected to be a rather tight midterm. And
I think there's 2 pieces to this, too, right? California is saying that it is a tit for tat for what happened in Texas, but California is also going to be putting it to voters. And I had one California official on with me yesterday saying, well, I think that it's going to work, but if not, we'll know where the voters stand. And that's what's making us different in all of this, that we are asking the voters to decide. And then, of course, the other piece that Texas Republicans keep turning to is everyone gerrymanders. OK, the difference is how bold-faced the politics is on this right now.
It's not subtle at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every 10 years. It's happening midstream.
Correct. And when it comes to essentially what could go on in California, there has already been some language that has been released where it seems that people are much more amenable to voting for this if it is seen as a direct response to Texas to try to balance out things, basically breaking democracy for the sake of saving democracy, as opposed to eliminating this independent redistricting commission. I mean, it's the old cliche the Democrats keep going back to, but they essentially say that they're fighting with one of their hands behind their back with these independent redistricting.
I'd like to know what the plan is to wear a black tie on a black shirt in Texas in August. I just don't know many people in the South that do that. But anyway.
Claire, I think we call that a confession if you were a prosecutor in court.
Yeah, I expected Perry Mason to pop up because he always gets the confessions, right? And, you know, and the sad thing is part of me has to acknowledge the guy's right about this. The legacy of the Roberts Court is going to end up being not what Roberts wanted it to be, because the decisions they made in Shelby and other cases that this couldn't have happened before until the Supreme Court said, no, we're kind of tired of that old idea that you can't bust up black districts to deny black representation. The Supreme Court said, yeah, now you can bust up black districts and try to, you know, basically that's what they're doing around the country.
And by the way,
they're destroying black districts.
The logic of it was, they said, well, you know what, we've moved far enough along. There's basically not racism anymore. We don't need the federal government actually overseeing certain states who've had 200 years of history of racist doctrine.
Yeah, and we now have representatives, state representatives, which I was one, represented a very compact district in the city of Kansas City. We've got a guy in Texas that has 500 miles. They extended his district from Austin, Texas, all the way down to the Mexican border and another 500 miles the other way. It's ridiculous trying to keep it from being a Democrat. So these are so gerrymandered. They are so bad. But now the Democrats have to do the exact same thing everywhere they can. The exact same thing.
Well, that brings us to our next point. Republicans currently control 25 of the 38 congressional districts in the state of Texas. Under the new map, President Trump would have carried 30 of 38 seats, all by more than 10 points. The Texas State Senate likely will pass the map this evening, and then Governor Greg Abbott is expected to sign it into law by tomorrow. To Claire's point, former President Barack Obama now sharing his support for California's attempt to counter those mid-decade redistricting efforts by Republicans in Texas. At a fundraiser earlier this week, Obama said he had, quote, tremendous respect for California Governor Gavin Newsom's proposal to redraw his state's congressional maps in response to that effort in Texas. Obama went on to say Democrats must respond effectively to Republican gerrymandering efforts, even if it means breaking with norms, and that Governor Newsom's plan is a, quote, responsible approach. Yesterday, the California Supreme Court said it would not prevent Democrats from moving forward with a plan to redraw congressional districts. After last night's vote in Austin, Governor Newsom posted on social media, writing, quote, it's on, Texas.
Claire, you talked about the districts being drawn, and it's so unrepresentative, and it's so insane. And at the end of the day, you just spur parties, the other party, to do the same thing in other states. And so here we go again. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. People always ask, hey, why are things so divided in Congress? Say it goes back to gerrymandering. I mean, it's that simple. I wish we could. I wish the court could revisit this. I mean, this is so insane. Or I wish we could have a constitutional amendment that would actually, end gerrymandering in the United States Congress and on state levels. It would make such a huge difference in the political discourse out there.
Yeah, safe seats in the House create gridlock, because the only thing a congressman or congresswoman worries about is a primary. It is a disincentive to compromise. It is disincentive to long-term legislation that actually businesses and citizens can rely on, because it swings back and forth based on who has the majority. So this is bad for government. Right. But the answer to what Texas is doing is not for us, who say it's bad for government to bring our hands and go, oh, this is bad for government. It's to okay, fine. You want to do it? Let's dance. Let's go. Let's redraw every single state we can as Democrats to create more Democratic seats. That's the only thing we can do right now, because if we don't, this country's representatives in Washington will not reflect the country. It's not even close. I mean, thank goodness we still have senators who have to represent an entire state. Right. But what these guys are doing is really, really bad. And by the way, let me just say, I think the Republicans think nobody's paying attention. Yeah. I think this will have an impact on turnout, especially among Democratic voters. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. And Dave Drucker, the other consequence, one of the main consequences I see from gerrymandering is you get the people in the safe seats, and I won't even mention their names, but you get the people in the safest seats. They say the most, especially on the Republican side, they say the most outrageous things, and they raise a ton of money. The more insulting, the more outrageous, the more vulgar, the crazier, the more insane they sound, because they're safe in their district. The more money they raise nationwide, the more their profile goes up. The way they're literally able to stand in the way of anything effective getting done in Congress. And I'm not even talking about on a bipartisan way. How many speakers of the House have Republicans had that have had their plans to move a Republican package forward stopped by people in these districts who can be as extreme and as crazy and as obstructionist as they want? because those are the incentives in this new gerrymandered world.
Well, and we've seen that over the past decade and a half, at least, because all the action, Joe, is in the primaries, right? I mean, how often are we discussing a topic here and you guys ask me what do Republicans think? And my answer is usually they don't want to rock the boat ahead of primary season, because the only place they're going to have a competitive race is in a Republican primary. I think Democrats also have to look out for this in this way, right? There's a lot of angst on the left. Democratic voters, sounding like Republican voters did for years, want their party to fight harder, fight more. And not that they should stand down, not that they shouldn't respond to fire with fire, but this could create the same sort of dynamic in Democratic primaries, where voters have to look over their shoulder, knowing that if they cooperate too much with the other party, if they're willing to compromise, if they don't appear to be fighting hard enough, it's the primary where they can be ousted. And we're in a situation, and look, what's happening now with the further gerrymandering of seats is on the one hand, we could in the short term have some more competitive districts, right? If you look at that Texas map, some is dark red, a lot of it is shaded light red. And that means if this atmosphere goes against the president and his party next year, I've had Republicans in Texas tell me they're worried instead of gaining 5 seats, you could have 10 competitive seats and you could end up losing seats. But in the long term, what you end up with are politicians that don't have a general election to worry about. They have a nomination fight to worry about.
I think you can stress enough how much things have changed very quickly. Look, my criticism of the Biden, Pelosi, Obama wing of the Democratic Party has been that they fought Bernie Sanders way harder than they ever fought Donald Trump. Like, let's be clear about that. When it was time to stop Bernie in 2020, Obama made all the phone calls to make sure Bernie Sanders was stopped. And yet, when it was 2016, the Obamas were like, well, when Trump goes low, we got to go high. We can't hit him like he's hitting us. And it really did feel like they didn't see the urgency of stopping Trump. It was all about stopping the left in their own party. But now, all of a sudden, guys, Obama is backing the if they go low, we get down low to stop them technique. That we don't want to do this. It's not ideal, of course, but we're going to do it because the alternative is the fascists win. God, this is a big change, right? Whether you're pro-Obama, you're anti-Obama because of the disappointment of some of his policies, whatever your position is as a non-Republican on Obama, the reality is I think we all realize his Pollyanna view of politics that existed kind of pre-Trump just didn't work. And it didn't work in his own time in office. Look at how Republicans treated him. He kept on trying to be bipartisan. Republicans, they were calling him like Trump. Trump became politically famous by lying about him being born in Kenya, for frig's sake. And he still kept doing we got to be the honorable ones. We got to be the decent ones. We got to, bipartisan. No, it's time to crush the Republican Party, ground them into dust, take that dust, throw it in the trash, throw that trash into the dump, and guys, maybe light a match. Guys, this is a big deal that Obama is changing his tone.